So in terms of the actual content for the session, I had them doing high intensity interval training. So like I said, this would not only help improve the power in their legs due to the nature of the exercises that I'd have them doing in the session, but high intensity interval training is actually known for helping to burn fat quite efficiently, as the nature of it results in using fat as an energy source, as an alternative, obviously therefore burning that fat off. So how the session would run, I'd obviously need a mat for some of the activities, such as the roll to tuck jump, just for their comfort and meaning they don't injure themselves. And obviously the way I'd demonstrate would be through verbal instructions and physical demonstrations as well. This means that if the client doesn't understand one form of demonstration or instruction, they also have the other to work in turn with it. So the interval training, for each move, they will perform as many reps as possible in 35 seconds, and then they'll rest for 15 seconds before they continue to the next move. After they've completed all 5 of these moves or exercises, they'll rest for 1 minute before they repeat the circuit, and they'll do 3 circuits in total. So you can see that the session includes jump squats for 35 seconds and then a rest for 15, burpees with a jump of course for 35 seconds and rest for 15, a roll to tuck jump for 35 seconds, rest for 15, star jumps for 35 seconds, rest for 15, and lunge jump for 35 seconds and rest for then 1 minute because it's the end of the set, before they begin the second set. So because of the requirement to perform as many reps as possible, they'll be working really hard, and they'll hopefully be working at a zone between 80 to 90%, possibly a minimum of 75%. If they're working any less than that, then I'll get them to work harder, because I think that my client, being the athlete that he is, I feel that he's very capable to push himself to his limits in this session and to receive the biggest benefits possible. The reason I want him to work anaerobically is because the aim of this session is to improve their power in their legs. So obviously whilst also burning fat, as these are the 2 main goals in the long term for the training program. Working anaerobically in the session will enhance the performer's ability to work anaerobically in rugby games also. The client's body should adapt to the anaerobic demand of the exercise, making it easier for the client to work anaerobically in the future. Sprinting in rugby is an essential anaerobic part of rugby, and that's especially for my client who plays as an outside centre, as he has to sprint to try and beat the opposition for speed and try to gain as much distance as possible or to score a try. All of the activities in this high intensity interval training work the muscles in the leg, meaning there will be hypertrophy of the quadriceps and hamstrings, resulting in a more forceful contraction when sprinting, propelling the performer forwards. This will be replicated during a rugby game when they have to sprint in a rugby game. I had the performer doing 3 sets of 35-second work intervals and 15-second rest intervals, as I felt this would push them, but not to the extent where it damages their body or where they can't continue. Again, I haven't specified a certain amount of repetitions I'd like them to do, which means that they shouldn't find this too tasking to the point where they can't continue, as realistically they are setting the pace. They are saying how many reps they can do in that 35-second period. They shouldn't be too fatigued, but knowing the drive that my client has and the intrinsic motivation they have, I expect them to push themselves to their limits to the point where they can make the appropriate adaptations that I expect them to make from the session. So again, like previously mentioned, I chose high intensity interval training as his sideline goal was also to lose weight, and HIIT training helps enable that. It burns fat as an energy store instead, which is why it helps you lose weight. In addition, this will help with the muscle toning definition that he wants, as losing weight will mean that his muscles become more defined, especially along with that hypertrophy that he'll receive from this exercise as well. And that'll make his body composition more like that of what a rugby player should have, so a higher muscle percentage and a lower fat percentage. I also have an alternative plan for the main session as well, if there was a lack of space, for example. So alternatively, they could do high intensity interval training on a treadmill instead. So that would only require that space of the treadmill. So for that, they would sprint for 10 seconds, rest for 60 seconds, and they'd repeat that 3 times. And then they'd sprint for 20 seconds and rest for 2 minutes, and repeat that 3 times. Then they'd rest for 5 minutes and repeat that whole session once over. So it would approximately take about 20 minutes, so it would probably be similar to that of the main content that I actually officially have planned, and it would also focus on their legs still, and would have the exact same effects in terms of losing weight and increasing the strength of muscles in their legs as well, and increasing the power in their legs. Obviously, that alternative would only be done in the case of a lack of equipment or space. So finally, obviously, I'd have the client doing a cool down afterwards. I don't want them to pick up any injuries, especially if they're having to perform for their college and their team outside of college as well. I want them to feel comfortable and able to perform to the best of their ability in a competitive situation as well. So a cool down is essential for that, as it will delay OBLA, meaning they don't feel the effects of lactic acid. It will help get rid of any waste products, help return their resting heart rate, and help bring their muscles to the regular elasticity and regular stretch. So all of that will prevent injury, which obviously means they can perform to their best in competitive situations throughout the rest of the week. So my cool down consisted of a series of cones that were lined in a zigzag, and that was 8 cones. And they did different activities through the cones. So first they sidestepped to each cone and touched each cone as they reached it. And then they did a backwards jog through and touched each cone. Then they did lunges to each cone. Then they did arm swings to each cone. Then they opened the gate and closed the gate, alternating at each cone. Then they did sweep the floor, which is a calf stretch. They did that at each cone, and then they did a lunge and twist, which obviously stretches the latissimus dorsi. So this cool down uses the same muscles as the warm-up did and as the main session did. So focused on the leg muscles, meaning the quadriceps and hamstrings, but also had those assisting muscles such as the latissimus dorsi. Again, it's a full body cool down because it involves arms as well, upper body, lower body, just to prevent injury in all areas, because all of the areas of the body will be used, whether assisting the main movements or not, or being the main drive for the movement. But obviously I focused on the legs as they were the main muscle groups being used. So the quadriceps and hamstrings are the main muscle groups being used in the session, so they were at the highest risk of injury. Again, I also had an alternative cool down just in case there was a lack of space. So that consisted of a jog on the spot for 30 seconds, high knees for 10 seconds, heel kicks for 10 seconds, jogging for 20 seconds, obviously breaks in between, probably a 10-second break in between. And then resistance band stretching on a mat. So that would be lunges, 10 reps, front raises, 10 reps, donkey kicks, 10 reps, glute bridges, 5 reps, hamstring stretch for 10 reps, and quadricep stretch for 10 reps. So again, exactly the same muscle groups, has exactly the same effect as the planned cool down. So it wouldn't be an issue if I had to use that alternative, which luckily I didn't in the actual session. Finally though, after that cool down, the way I ended the session is I gave the client a plenary. So that was kind of just a debrief of everything, just ensuring that they feel okay first of all, because obviously the demand of the exercise was very high, so I need to ensure that they're feeling okay and aren't going to be at risk once they leave the session. Making sure that to tell them that they need to hydrate regularly throughout the day due to the loss of fluid from the exercise through sweat. And also I'd obviously have to pack away. I would probably do that after the client has finished. I won't get the client to help because I feel like they need to have a full recovery and full rest after the session. So yeah, I just give them a general debrief and just make sure that they're feeling okay after the session. So here you can see evidence of the session itself in action. You can see that from this alone, you can see that I remain at eye contact with them. I am guiding them both physically through physical demonstrations and verbally, pointing through, kind of guiding them through the whole session, and keeping a close eye on them and watching their technique throughout the session as well to ensure that everything's done correctly and that they're not at risk of injury by using an incorrect technique. So in terms of a review of the session, first if we look at the aims of the session and whether I achieved them or not, I feel that I was very successful in achieving my aims specific to the session because I did have my client working at their target heart rate. I had them working at around 80% of their maximum heart rate throughout the session, meaning they were working anaerobically and improving the efficiency of their anaerobic systems, which would obviously benefit them when working anaerobically on the rugby pitch as well during those sprints. I also had them working at an RPE where they consistently told me that they were working. It fluctuated slightly, but it was consistently above 6, so it was consistently 7 and above, but never 10. I never had them working at a point where they were completely exerting maximal effort to the point where perhaps they might have felt ill. So it fluctuated between 7, 8 and 9 throughout the whole session, meaning I was successful in reaching that target for the session as well. Overall, I could visibly see that I was working them how I wanted them to as well. So I pushed them to work at a demanding intensity where they were working to a point where they were breathless and visibly needed those recovery periods, which is good because I wanted them to do the maximum amount of repetitions that they could in the period of time that I'd given them in that 35 seconds. So that showed that they were listening to me and putting maximum effort, perhaps again showing that I was encouraging them and motivating them as well.